Today, I'm bringing you a story so tense it tightens your chest, set beneath the burning skies of the Old West. A forgotten valley, a weathered saloon, and a man who thought he'd outrun his past. This is a place where fate doesn't knock, it kicks the door in. It all started with a single look across a bar counter. A small moment that was enough to set destiny back into motion. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. In towns like this, secrets don't fade. They hang in the air like burned powder. Violence follows men long after they swear they've laid their guns down. Some former killers hide behind bar towels and polished glassware, convincing themselves the past can be wiped clean as easily as spilled whiskey. Until strangers arrive. Strangers who know how to read hands, who recognize death in the careful movements of a bartender's pour. When a man's history is written in blood, redemption is nothing more than the quiet pause before the storm breaks. The Copper Crown Saloon sat on the edge of Redemption Valley like a relic left behind by time. From the street, it looked no different than 100 other frontier watering holes. Sun-bleached boards, splintered siding, a hand-painted sign creaking on rusted chains, windows filmed with decades of dust and cigarette smoke. A hitching post that hadn't felt the tug of a horse in 20 years stood watch beside a gravel lot, now crowded with pickup trucks parked crooked and close. Tomorrow there's something waiting that you won't want to miss. Because beneath that ordinary exterior, the saloon played a far more complicated role in the valley's quiet balance. It was where miners drank away payday, where cowboys drowned regrets, where deals were sealed with handshakes instead of ink, and where, if the whispers were true, money sometimes changed hands without ever touching a ledger or tax form. For 6 years now, Iver Crow had been tending bar at the Copper Crown, stacking one careful day on top of another, building a life that looked painfully normal. At 43, he moved with a relaxed ease that masked coiled readiness, a presence that made trouble think twice without him ever raising his voice. Silver threaded his dark hair at the temples. His face was worn but clean-shaven, his clothes plain yet precise. Nothing about him hinted that he'd ever been anything other than what he appeared to be. A small-town bartender scraping out an honest living in a place the modern world had forgotten. Folks trusted him because he remembered their drinks and kept their secrets. Talmadge Rowe, the town sheriff, appreciated how problems seemed to dissolve before he had to step in. And Briar Wynn, the Copper Crown's aging owner, valued Iver deeply. Business had never been better since he'd taken over the bar and quietly kept the peace. That Tuesday evening, Iver worked through his routine, polishing glasses already spotless, lining bottles into perfect rows, tracking the slow swell of the crowd. Regulars had staked their usual ground. Mac Wilson slumped at the corner table, nursing the same whiskey he'd been working on for 3 hours. The Crawford brothers held the pool table hostage despite their legendary inability to sink a ball. Miners, fresh off shift from Black Ridge, still wore dust on their clothes, spending wages that hadn't yet cooled in their pockets. The saloon's battered door swung open, dragging in desert air and Briar Wynn. Iver knew instantly something was wrong. Briar's shoulders were tight, her eyes flicking around the room before settling on the back office where the safe was kept. "Pour me something strong, Iver," she muttered, sliding onto her usual stool at the quiet end of the bar. "The good stuff you hide under the counter." Before he could reach for the small batch bourbon he saved for Briar's worst days, a group near the jukebox lifted their glasses. "To Eamon," they shouted. The toast sent a visible shiver through her. 8 years, Briar whispered. 8 years since Eamon Wynn vanished into the hills, and they still drank to him like he might walk through that door any night. Iver poured her drink with steady precision, his face giving nothing away. "Some folks need their rituals," he said softly. helps them make sense of what they can't. Briar looked at him then. Really looked. "And what about you, Iver?" she asked. "What helps you make sense of things?" He didn't have to answer. 3 strangers had just stepped inside. They didn't move like locals. Too alert, too controlled. The leader wore expensive lizard skin boots that had never touched honest ranch dirt. One man kept checking an antique pocket watch. The third studied the exits like he was memorizing a map. "Evening, gentlemen," Iver said, his tone polite, professional. In the mirror behind the bottles, he noted how they spread out. One near the front door, one with a clear line on the back exit. The leader taking the bar within arm's reach of Mac Wilson's forgotten whiskey. "Bourbon," the leader said, his accent making it clear he hadn't been anywhere near Redemption Valley until today. "Your best." As Iver poured, his eye caught the second man's watch. The hands were frozen at 10:13. Most people wouldn't have noticed. Iver did. He'd survived by noticing things others missed, back when he lived under a different name, in a different life. As the night wore on, tension crept through the room, felt only by him. Mac finally left around 10. His usual crumpled 20 left behind. Briar vanished into her office, supposedly to balance the till, though the sound of her pacing carried through the thin walls. The 3 strangers stayed, drinking slowly, watching. Iver moved through closing routine, every motion smooth, measured, while his mind ran through contingencies. He'd stood on both sides of moments like this. Though Iver Crow, respectable bartender of 6 years, wasn't supposed to know anything about that. When the man with the frozen watch stepped up for one last bourbon, Iver caught the other 2 shifting in the mirror. One at the back door, one at the front. A clean triangle. His hand hovered over the bottle for a heartbeat. 15 years of hard-earned survival pressed against 6 years of careful disguise. The question wasn't whether something was about to happen. It was whether he could afford to let them know he saw it coming. Across the room, Wren Calder, the young waitress, met his eyes. She felt it too. Iver gave her a near-invisible shake of the head. Whatever was coming, she wasn't meant to be part of it. The college student had been working at the Copper Crown longer than most seasonal hires, and she felt it too. That subtle wrongness creeping through the room. Wren Calder's hand drifted to the small of her back, where she kept a canister of pepper spray ever since a rough customer last summer. Iver Crow caught the movement and gave her the faintest shake of his head. If trouble was coming, the last thing they needed was Wren trying to be brave. Through the front windows, Iver noticed movement in the parking lot. Too many shapes, drifting with purpose instead of drunken aimlessness. Shadows slid between trucks where there shouldn't have been any. His thoughts flicked to the cash hidden beneath the floorboards in Briarwind's office. This month's take. And the quiet investment from that man out of Las Vegas, the one whose name never appeared on paper. Briar had warned him when he took the job that some questions were better left alone, some details safer unspoken. Iver had recognized that look in her eyes back then. He'd seen it plenty of times before. The look of someone trapped in something too big to outrun alone. That look, more than the paycheck, was why he'd stayed. That and the need for a place quiet enough to disappear. Now, as his hand closed around the bourbon bottle, Iver wondered if the past had finally found him, or if this was just another test of the life he'd built piece by careful piece. Morning came soft and deceptive. Sunlight washed Redemption Valley's main street in amber and gold, making the town look peaceful enough to believe in. Iver's day started long before his shift at the Copper Crown. Every morning began with a 5-mile run through desert trails, no matter the heat or cold. Old habits never truly died. and staying sharp had kept him alive long enough to need new ones. He'd learned that routines could save your life, or end it, depending on who was paying attention. That morning, something felt wrong before his boots ever hit the dirt. A black pickup with darkened windows sat half a mile from his cabin, engine idling despite the early hour. The same truck he'd seen circling the Copper Crown the night before, rolling past 3 times before vanishing into the dark beyond the valley. We put a lot of time into preparing and telling this story. So if you're enjoying it, subscribing really helps us keep going. Now, back to it. Iver cataloged every detail without slowing his stride. Arizona plates, less than a month old. A dent in the driver's door, recently patched with filler but not yet painted. He altered his route, cutting through a dry riverbed, doubling back twice to be sure. The pickup followed at a distance, sloppy enough to almost make him miss the kind of professionals who used to hunt him. Almost. As he passed Miller's General Store, a sharp noise cut through the morning, a scuffle echoing from the narrow alley behind the buildings. A group of teenagers had cornered something. The edge in their voices tightened Iver's jaw. He recognized 2 of them, the Carson boys. Their father ran the pawn shop and asked too few questions about where things came from. "Keep moving," he told himself. "Not your problem." Then came the yelp. Painful, desperate, defiant. Before he could stop himself, Iver was already turning toward the alley. The kids scattered at his approach, bravado draining fast in the face of an adult. The Carson boys lingered just long enough to glare at him. Looks that reminded Iver of other young predators he'd known, the ones who usually ended up in unmarked ground before they were old enough to buy a drink. Behind a stack of warped pallets lay what they'd been tormenting. A red Australian cattle dog, maybe 2 or 3 years old. One ear was torn. A frayed rope served as a collar. The dog's sharp eyes tracked Iver's every move. He'd seen that look before, in people who learned early not to trust. "Easy," Iver said quietly, lowering himself into a crouch. "I'm not here to hurt you." The dog growled weakly and backed deeper into the corner. Iver noticed it favoring its left front paw. A fresh cut above one eye told him the kids had been throwing rocks. Older scars beneath the coarse coat spoke of a harder past. He reached slowly into his pocket and pulled out a strip of beef jerky from his run pack. The motion made the dog bare its teeth, but the fear outweighed the threat. Iver recognized that fear. He'd worn it himself once. "Your call," he murmured, placing the jerky on the ground and stepping back. The dog's nose twitched. It didn't move. Iver waited. Time, he'd learned, was a tool if you knew how to use it. He was about to leave when he noticed the tag against the dog's rough fur. Property of Black Ridge Security. The name stirred something unpleasant. Black Ridge had folded last spring after its owner, Blaine Kest, suffered a mysterious accident. The kind that happened when the wrong debts went unpaid. Iver had heard enough at the bar to piece it together. Kest had been skimming from clients, some of them the kind who saw theft as a personal insult. "You're a long way from your old job," Iver muttered. The dog's ears perked, intelligence cutting through fear. A door opened farther down the alley. Dr. Senna Hale stepped out of the back entrance to her veterinary clinic, trash bag in hand. She stopped short when she saw Iver and the dog, her expression shifting from surprise to calm assessment. "That's the 4th stray this month," she said quietly. "Town's getting overrun since they cut the animal control budget." Iver had seen Dr. Hale around, but never spoken to her. She was newer to Redemption Valley, having taken over the old practice 3 years earlier. There were rumors. Chicago, a lawsuit, a missed diagnosis, a patient lost. Iver ignored them. He had enough ghosts of his own. "This one isn't exactly a stray," Iver Crow said, nodding toward the collar. "Looks like a security dog." Dr. Senna Hale stepped closer, her movements calm and deliberate. The dog's growl deepened, but Iver noticed it lacked the raw edge it had shown earlier. "Interesting," Senna murmured, spotting the company tag. "Former security, then. And judging by his condition, he's been on his own for months." She studied Iver with the same clinical focus she'd given the dog. Most people would have kept walking. "Most people did," Iver replied, rising slowly. "Including me, almost." Senna slipped a business card from her pocket and held it out. "Bring him around to the front entrance of the clinic. I'll take a look at the paw and that cut over his eye." She hesitated, then added, her voice carrying a weight that went beyond veterinary concern. "Sometimes the strays that find us are the ones that need us most." Iver glanced from the card to the dog, then back to her. "I'm not really looking for a—" "I didn't ask you to adopt him." Senna cut in, a faint smile touching her lips, but not her eyes. "Just bring him in, unless you've got somewhere more important to be." There was no judgment in her tone, yet something about it echoed Briar Wind's words from the night before. Some people asked too many questions. Others knew better. Iver pocketed the card and watched Senna head back inside. The dog had relaxed slightly during their exchange, its growl fading to uneasy whimpers. Despite the injuries and the abuse, it held itself alert, eyes tracking every opening in the alley. A survivor. Iver respected that. 20 minutes and half a pack of jerky later, they reached the clinic. That's when Iver spotted the black pickup again, parked across the street now. The driver's window was cracked just enough for cigarette smoke to curl out. Iver caught the brief glint of what might have been a camera lens. The dog stiffened, a low rumble building in its chest. "Yeah," Iver muttered, guiding him toward the door. "I don't like them either." The clinic's waiting room smelled of antiseptic and desert dust. Iver sat in a molded plastic chair, watching through the observation window as Dr. Senna Hale examined the dog. He'd stayed calm on the walk over, limping beside Iver like they'd struck a quiet agreement to trust each other. For now. "His name's Cinder," Senna said as she emerged, holding an electronic scanner. "Microchip checks out, registered to Black Ridge Security. But something about it doesn't add up." Iver raised an eyebrow and waited. He'd learned silence pulled more truth than questions ever did. "The chip was registered 2 years ago," Senna continued. "But Black Ridge didn't start operating here until 14 months back. And the listed address? It doesn't exist in Redemption Valley." Before Iver could respond, the clinic door opened. Sheriff Talmadge Rowe stepped inside, his weathered expression tightening when he saw Iver. "Figured I'd find you here," Rowe said. Word traveled fast when the quiet bartender started rescuing dogs out of alleys. Senna's posture stiffened slightly. "Sheriff, I wasn't aware there was an animal emergency." "Just checking on our resident Good Samaritan," Rowe replied evenly. He turned to Iver. "We need to talk about last night. Heard there was some unusual activity after closing." Iver caught the meaning immediately. Something had gone wrong with the money drop. And Rowe showing up in person meant it wasn't just a scheduling hiccup. "I'll need about 20 minutes, Iver said, watching Rowe's reaction. The sheriff's hand twitched toward his holster, then settled. A warning, quiet but clear. "I can keep Cinder here for observation," Senna offered, missing the tension. "He's dehydrated. That paw needs treatment, and I'm curious about this chip." "Cinder," Rowe repeated, his voice sharpening just enough to flatten the dog's ears. Fitting name for something that shows up out of nowhere, don't you think, Iver? Iver stood slowly, keeping his manner relaxed while alarm bells rang in his head. Rowe didn't take chances like this, cornering him in public, hinting at their arrangement. Something had the sheriff rattled. Bills are on me, Iver said to Senna, reaching for his wallet. Call it community service. She waved him off. Let's wait and see if someone claims him first. She paused, then added, though given what happened to Black Ridge, I'm not holding my breath. What do you mean? Iver asked, even though he already knew. The owner, Rose said quietly. Blaine Kest. Disappeared last spring. Truck found abandoned near the old silver mine. No sign of him. Nervous, according to his wife, Senna added. Always looking over his shoulder. Said he'd been running security for people who didn't tolerate mistakes. Rose's face had gone pale. Unfortunate business. That's why we really need to, Rowe began. The clinic door opened again. A man in an expensive suit stepped inside, shoes too polished for Redemption Valley's dust. Iver noticed the slight bulge beneath his left arm, a shoulder holster professionally concealed. The man smiled at Dr. Senna Hale. But the smile never reached his eyes. The man's smile never reached his eyes. I'm Cyrus Dent, Bureau of Land Management, he said evenly. And I believe you once worked at Northwest Regional Hospital in Seattle. The color drained from Dr. Senna Hale's face. That was a long time ago, she replied, steady but strained. We're closing for lunch. You'll need to come back. Actually, Dent cut in smoothly, I'm here about the dog. He glanced toward Talmadge Row. Word moves fast in small towns, doesn't it, Sheriff? Rowe's hand drifted closer to his sidearm. That conversation can wait, Iver Crow said calmly, shifting just enough to place himself between Senna and Dent. I think it can, Dent answered. Dr. Hale is right, Iver went on. The clinic's closed for lunch. Dent's smile widened, thin and unsettling. Interesting, he said. A bartender rescues a security dog belonging to a man who vanished, a veterinarian with a complicated past, and a sheriff who's been making some curious notes in the county's asset forfeiture records. He reached into his jacket. Everyone tensed, then relaxed when he produced only a business card. When you're ready to talk about the real reason I'm in Redemption Valley, Dent said, setting the card on the counter, call that number. He turned and left. The bell over the door chimed cheerfully, completely out of place in the heavy silence he left behind. From the exam room, Cinder let out a low growl. Iver's eyes dropped to the dog's collar. Beneath the matted fur was a small metal tag, not standard Black Ridge issue. Custom. The numbers stamped into it were unmistakable. 1013. Senna, Iver said quietly, I think you should close up early today, and maybe stay somewhere that isn't your house. You don't know what you're stepping into, Rowe warned, though his voice lacked its usual conviction. Iver thought about the black pickup outside, about Dent's flawless suit, about how Cinder had shifted from fear to protection in less than an hour. No, Iver said, watching Senna gather her things with shaking hands. But I'm starting to understand exactly what I walked away from 12 years ago. And it's followed me. Rowe's phone buzzed. He glanced down, swore under his breath. 3 men just walked into the Copper Crown, he said. They're asking for you, by your old name. Cinder limped over and pressed against Iver's leg, posture alert, eyes locked forward. In that stance, Iver recognized something he hadn't felt in a long time. A partner who understood that survival meant choosing the right fight. Take Senna out the back, Iver told Rowe. Then get to the saloon and act normal. I'll deal with our guests. Iver, Senna began. He cut her off gently. Some questions are better left unanswered, he said, echoing Briar Wynn's words. But if they're asking anyway, they might as well hear the answers they won't like. The Copper Crown looked different in daylight. Smaller, older. Its flaws stood out without the cover of evening shadows. Iver approached from the west, the sun at his back stretching his shadow across the gravel lot. Cinder moved beside him, the limp barely noticeable now. Iver wondered how much of that injury had been real, and how much had been performance. The black pickup was gone, but fresh tire tracks led behind the saloon. They hadn't left. They'd repositioned. 3 motorcycles waited out front, expensive touring models with out-of-state plates. Not the kind weekend riders favored. These were built for distance, for speed, for men who treated violence like a trade. Iver paused at the weathered door, feeling the weight of the Colt 1911 pressed against his lower back. He'd pulled it from a lockbox beneath his cabin floor. 12 years of dust disturbed for a weapon he'd sworn off. Promises, like identities, sometimes needed revision. Through the window, he saw them. The same 3 men from the night before, spread around the empty bar with practiced precision. The leader sat facing the door. The others held clear lines to both exits. In the corner, Wren Calder set up for the afternoon shift, her movements tight with tension. Briar was nowhere in sight. Stay, Iver murmured to Cinder. The dog looked at him, almost amused. Fine, Iver sighed, but you chose this. He shoved the door open and let it slam behind him. The sound cracked through the saloon like a gunshot. Wren flinched. The 3 men didn't. Bar doesn't open until 4, Iver said, his voice flat with a certainty earned long ago. We're not here for the drinks, the leader replied, his East Coast accent now unmistakable. Though I have to admit, you picked a quaint place to hide, Mr. Blackwood. Or do you prefer Iver Crow these days? The name hit like a fist, one he hadn't heard spoken aloud in 12 years. A name meant for grave markers and faded wanted posters, not a bartender in a forgotten desert town. You've got me confused with someone else, Iver said, moving behind the bar with easy precision. The position gave him access to the sawed-off shotgun mounted beneath the counter, and put solid oak between him and his visitors. Cinder slipped into the shadows under a nearby table, instinctively choosing concealment. Confusion isn't something I struggle with, the leader said, standing. Iver Crow, former enforcer for Orzo Blackmere's outfit, vanished after the Riverside Massacre 12 years ago, along with $2 million and a considerable amount of sensitive information. Carrick Holt continued, his voice calm, measured. Some people believed you were dead. Others, he swept a hand around the empty saloon, suspected you were hiding in plain sight. Iver Crow's hand rested near the concealed shotgun beneath the bar. He didn't reach for it. Not yet. And who are you? He asked, though the answer was already forming in his mind. Carrick Holt, the man replied with a shallow, mocking bow. I worked for Orzo Blackmere back when you did. Junior position, you wouldn't remember me. But I remember you. Everyone remembers Dustbound. The name slid down Iver's spine like ice, a relic from a life he'd buried deep. Dustbound, Wren Calder asked from the corner, her voice small but steady. That's when Iver understood. She hadn't just been nearby. She'd been placed there. Collateral. Their eyes met briefly. In hers, he saw fear, and something worse. Betrayal by proximity. Another innocent caught in his wake. Dustbound, Carrick went on, savoring it. Because no door stopped you. No lock held. No safe stayed closed. And when Orzo needed a message delivered permanently, you appeared, did what was required, and vanished. No witnesses, no evidence, just bodies. Iver kept his face unreadable, but his mind was already moving. Angles, distances, exits. Old instincts snapping awake with terrifying ease. Nice story, he said evenly. But I'm just a bartender. Carrick laughed, hollow and cold in the wide-open saloon. A bartender who keeps perfect sight lines to every entrance, who positioned himself behind cover the moment I walked in, who's already gauging the reach to at least 3 weapons. He nodded to his men. They shifted subtly. Even Cinder adjusted, low to the floor, alert. Interesting dog you picked up, Mr. Crow. If you're here to kill me, Iver said quietly, you're doing a poor job of it. Kill you? Carrick looked genuinely surprised. Why would I kill the man I spent 5 years tracking? The man who took something that belongs to the Blackmere legacy. The man who may be the only one alive who knows where Orzo hid his real fortune before the feds closed in. Iver's expression didn't change, but the information hit hard. Orzo Blackmere had been arrested a decade ago, his empire dismantled. Officially, most of his assets were seized. Unofficially, rumors of a hidden reserve had never died. I walked away 12 years ago, Iver said carefully. Whatever Orzo did after that wasn't my business. That's where you're wrong, Carrick replied, stepping closer. Orzo never believed you ran because of Riverside. He thought you were building his exit plan, that the money and intel you took were just the beginning. And now he wants it back? Iver asked. Carrick's smile sharpened. Orzo died in federal custody last month. Heart attack, they said. Convenient, considering he was set to testify against certain partners the following week. The pieces began to fit, and the picture was ugly. So who do you work for now? Iver asked. The future, Carrick said simply, and so do you, whether you realize it yet or not. The saloon door opened. Talmadge Rowe stepped inside, one hand resting casually near his holster. Iver caught the tension in his shoulders, the careful calculation behind every step. Afternoon, gentlemen, Rowe said. Everything all right in here? Carrick turned smoothly, smile intact. Sheriff, perfect timing. We were just discussing local history with your bartender. Fascinating stories about this region. Redemption Valley doesn't have much history worth revisiting, Rowe replied, his eyes flicking from Iver to Wren, then back. Oh, I disagree, Carrick said. Some histories are simply buried deeper. For instance, did you know your bartender has an extensive background in security work? Vault systems, high-value asset protection. Rowe's face stayed neutral. Iver's past isn't my concern, as long as he keeps the peace. Of course, Carrick said, stepping back. We should be going anyway. He set a black business card on the bar. Unlike Cyrus Dent's government issue, this one bore only a silver embossed number. Our associates will be at the abandoned Black Ridge mine tomorrow night. Midnight. They're eager to discuss old times and new opportunities. His eyes locked on Iver. I suggest you attend. And if I don't? Iver asked. Carrick's smile never reached his eyes. Then certain details about Redemption Valley might reach the wrong ears. Or, his gaze slid to Wren, then toward the back office where Briar Wynn was hiding. There could be accidents. It's dangerous country. People disappear in the desert all the time. Cinder rose from beneath the table, a low growl building as he positioned himself between Wren and the strangers. Carrick merely watched, amused. Funny how fast attachments form. Animals, people, makes them vulnerable. Iver's hand edged closer to the hidden shotgun. You've delivered your message. Now get out of my bar. Your bar? Carrick raised an eyebrow. I thought it belonged to Briar Wynn. Ownership can be flexible in your line of work. He nodded to his men. They moved for the door with practiced coordination. Carrick paused at the threshold, curiosity flickering across his face. One last question, Dustbound. After all the blood on your hands, how do you sleep pretending to be just another honest man? Iver met his gaze without blinking. With one eye open, always. Carrick's laugh echoed as he left. Moments later, motorcycle engines roared and faded into the distance. The silence that followed throbbed with unanswered questions. Rowe crossed to Wren, who was still shaking. As the danger ebbed, Cinder returned to Iver's side, pressing against his leg. They were waiting when I got here, Wren said, her voice steadier than she felt. I didn't expect this, Wren Calder said quietly. They knew my name, Iver. They knew where I live, where my sister works. Her voice wavered. They told me to ask you about Riverside, about what really happened there. Talmadge Rowe's expression hardened. Iver, I think it's time you told us exactly what kind of trouble just walked into our town. The office door creaked open and Briar Wynn stepped out. Her face was pale, but steady. Unlike Wren, she didn't look shocked by what had been revealed, only grim, as if suspicions she'd carried for years had finally taken shape. This isn't just about him, is it? Briar said, looking straight at Rowe. This ties into what Eamon was involved in. Why he disappeared. Iver looked from one face to the next, seeing pieces of a puzzle he hadn't even known existed. All this time, he'd believed he was the only one in Redemption Valley carrying dangerous secrets. We need to talk, he said at last. All of us. But not here. He picked up Carrick Holt's black card, studying the silver-embossed number. Someone went to a lot of trouble to find me. The question is whether they want what I took 12 years ago, or whether this is about something bigger. Wren met his eyes. The fear she'd shown earlier had hardened into resolve. The same resolve that had kept her alive working a frontier bar since she was 18. Iver glanced at Cinder, at the strange 1013 tag, at Rowe's carefully neutral posture, at Briar's knowing stare. Like the fact that Blaine Kest and his security outfit were working for the same people who once employed me, Iver said slowly, connections locking into place. Like the fact that the Black Ridge mine and the money moving through this bar might be tied to something far larger than local corruption. And like the fact that Carrick Holt isn't here just for me, he added. He's setting the board for something else. Cinder's ears snapped upright seconds before the sound reached them, multiple engines approaching fast. We're moving, Iver said, decision set. Out the back. To where? Briar asked, already heading for the office and the rear exit. Iver checked the Colt 1911 at his back. The weight was familiar, comforting and damning all at once. First, we let a vet look closer at a dog's microchip. Then we figure out why a dead crime boss thinks I'm holding his missing millions. As they slipped out behind the Copper Crown, sunlight flashed off Metal High in the hills overlooking town. The unmistakable glint of a rifle scope tracking their escape. The ghost had stayed buried for 12 years, but his shadow had caught up. And in Redemption Valley, shadows turned lethal under desert sun. The abandoned Black Ridge mine stretched across the desert floor as the sun dipped behind the western peaks, casting jagged shadows over rusted steel and broken earth. Once the lifeblood of Redemption Valley, it now stood as a monument to failed promises and vanished prosperity. Chain-link fencing topped with barbed wire circled the compound, dotted with sun-bleached no trespassing signs. More symbolic than effective. Iver studied the site from a ridge a quarter-mile out, binoculars revealing what the naked eye couldn't. Cinder lay beside him, motionless except for his eyes, tracking the same movements Iver logged automatically. 3 men at the main gate, Iver murmured. 2 more sweeping the perimeter. Professional, not local. Rowe shifted behind him. This is way beyond what we expected. These aren't Holt Street people, Rowe added. This looks military. Private contractors, Iver corrected. Ex-special forces most likely. Expensive talent. He lowered the binoculars. Which brings us back to the real question. Who's paying for this? Dr. Senna Hale spoke quietly. After the confrontation at the Copper Crown, they'd regrouped at her clinic, turning the back room into a makeshift command post. Breyer had brought financial records, numbers that told a darker story about the cash flowing through town. Wren had insisted on coming too, her shock replaced by steel. Orzo Blackmere may be dead, Breyer said, but his organization ran deep. Federal agencies, private firms, even foreign interests. Eamon uncovered some of those links before he vanished. The revelation shifted everything. This wasn't just about Iver's past anymore. It was about a network that had already taken local lives. The mine makes sense as a base, Iver said. Remote, defensible, and according to local lore, riddled with tunnels connecting to town. Not just lore, Rowe replied. County records confirm 3 major tunnel systems. One runs beneath the courthouse, another to the old bank. And the third, Breyer finished quietly, runs directly under the Copper Crown. Eamon mapped it years ago, called it his insurance policy. Insurance against what? Iver asked. Breyer's face carried the weight of secrets held too long. Against the people using Redemption Valley as a black site. Eamon had a name for it. She paused. Operation Ghost Key. The words hit Iver like a live wire. Ghost Key, he said. You're sure? Breyer nodded. He said they were searching for a specific key, something that could unlock what had been hidden by the ghost. Iver finished the thought for her, the truth settling heavy in his gut. By me. Every eye turned to him. The Riverside Massacre? Iver said, his voice shifting, harder now, stripped of warmth. It wasn't what the papers claimed, not a gang war, not a deal gone bad. What was it? Senna asked. An extraction, Iver replied, of a federal witness, high value, carrying evidence that could have exposed dozens of officials in a corruption web stretching from New York to Washington. Orzo Blackmere was just the visible face. And you were sent to kill that witness? Wren asked, steady despite her shaking hands. Iver gave a humorless breath. That's what Orzo believed. That's what everyone believed. That Dustbound was sent to erase a loose end. He looked at them all. But my real orders came from somewhere else. The government, Rose said slowly. They wanted the witness extracted and hidden, along with the evidence. And that evidence, Rowe continued, understanding dawning, is what they think you still have. Iver didn't answer. He didn't need to. The realization settled in slowly, heavy as lead. The key they'd been hunting all these years. Iver Crow gave a grim nod. A key to electronic vaults, he said. Account numbers, transaction trails, blackmail files. Enough evidence to make Orzo Blackmere look like a small-time hustler. Do you still have it? Dr. Senna Hale asked quietly. Iver met her eyes without flinching. never did. The witness had it. His name was Hollis Vane. Briar Wynn inhaled sharply. I got him out, Iver continued. Gave him a new identity, set him up to disappear. That was the deal. But Orzo believed you took it, Briar said, along with his money. The money was Hollis's, Iver replied. An exit fee, payment for years of skimming operations he helped manage. Taking it made my disappearance look like a betrayal, instead of what it really was, Talmadge Rowe finished, a trace of reluctant respect in his voice. A sanctioned extraction. You were working for someone inside the government, Rowe added. Was I? Iver's smile held no warmth. That's how they presented themselves. But 12 years gives a man time to reconsider who was really pulling the strings. Cinder's ears snapped upright. His body went taut. Seconds later, the distant growl of engines rolled across the desert. Heavy vehicles, moving with purpose toward the mine. Through the binoculars, Iver watched a black SUV with tinted windows lead 3 unmarked vans toward the main gate. The guards straightened immediately, their postures shifting. Whoever had arrived carried weight. Looks like the principals finally showed up for our midnight meeting, Iver said, passing the binoculars to Rowe. Rowe adjusted the focus. That's Cyrus Dent, he said. Then his voice faltered. And that's Olin Greer with him, and Vetch Moreland. Iver wasn't surprised. Local officials are the easiest to compromise, he said. They control permits, policing priorities. Everything in operation like this needs to stay invisible. So what exactly is the operation? Ren Calder asked, cutting through the shock. Based on what Eamon uncovered, Briar said, tapping the files. Redemption Valley's a transit hub. Money, information, sometimes people, all moving under the radar with help from cooperative authorities. And now they're expanding, Iver added. The sudden interest in me, the increased security. They're gearing up for something bigger. Senna, still watching the mine through the binoculars, stiffened. There's someone else arriving, she said. A woman. Silver hair, expensive suit. Everyone's deferring to her. Iver took the binoculars back. The woman stood rigid, posture unmistakably military. Even at a distance, he recognized her. Malith Rowe, he said, the name tasting like ash. Hollis's wife. The room went still. She was the one person I was ordered to leave behind, Iver continued. Her death was supposed to convince Orzo I'd betrayed him, to seal the cover story. But you didn't kill her, Senna said softly. No, Iver replied. And that mistake has come back to haunt us all. The back room of Senna's clinic felt tight after the open desert. Maps of Redemption Valley covered one wall, red markers dotting properties tied to suspicious activity. Financial records and deeds were spread across the exam table. A laptop glowed with satellite images of the Black Ridge complex. Malith Rowe didn't just survive, Iver said, tracing connections across the documents. She took over Hollis's role, expanded the network, and she never stopped looking, for him or for me. But why now? Briar asked, after 12 years of silence. Because of Blaine Kest, Rose said darkly. His security company wasn't just doing local work. He tapped the contracts. They were running surveillance across the Southwest, hunting for specific indicators. Indicators of what? Ren asked. Rowe looked up slowly. Of the ghost key. Asked of Hollis Vane. Iver Crow said quietly. Blaine Kest was hunting for signs of a ghost. Instead, he found the ghost. Senna Hale leaned in, her clinical instincts slotting facts into place. The tag, 1013. That isn't random, is it? Iver shook his head. October 13th, the date of the Riverside operation. Understanding dawned. Cinder belonged to Kest, Senna said. He used trained dogs as part of a search grid. The tags are likely location identifiers, Iver replied. When Kest disappeared, Cinder kept working. Kept searching, Wren Calder said softly. Until he found you. Found me, Iver corrected, or was programmed to find me. He met Senna's gaze. That chip you found isn't standard pet ID. It's military-grade tracking tech. That's why they were so interested at the clinic. Senna nodded slowly. It probably activated when it detected your presence, sent a signal to whoever's monitoring him. Cinder, curled near the wall, lifted his head at the sound of his name, sharp eyes following each speaker. So they found you, Briar Wynn said. What do they want? If Hollis has the key and you never did, what are you to them now? Iver's expression darkened. I'm the only one who knows where Hollis Vane is. I built his new identity, laid his cover, placed him somewhere no one would ever think to look. And they're giving you a choice, Talmadge Rowe said grimly. Hand over Hollis or watch Redemption Valley burn. They've already started, Briar added, sliding a document across the table. The bank foreclosed on the Henderson ranch last month. The Mitchell store shut down for code violations. Pressure, Iver said, applied carefully. Standard softening tactics before a takeover. But why here? Wren asked. Why Redemption Valley? Location, Rowe answered without hesitation. Less than a day's drive from 5 states. Minimal federal presence. Miles of open desert. And the mine, Briar added. According to Eamon's notes, Black Ridge isn't just abandoned. The deepest levels were converted years ago into a secure facility. Iver nodded, old training resurfacing as he assessed the picture with cold clarity. A black site, comms gear, storage vaults, holding cells, probably built during the Cold War and kept off the books. By whom? Senna asked. By whoever Malith Rowe really works for, Iver said. An operation this sophisticated isn't just crime. It's power, the kind that lives above the law. The truth settled over the room, heavy and suffocating. This wasn't about Iver's past alone. It wasn't even about local corruption. They'd stepped into something far larger. So what do we do? Wren asked, steady despite the tension. We can't hand over Hollis, and we can't let them take our town. Iver felt a flash of respect. She had every reason to walk away. She didn't. We have 3 assets they don't know about, he said, moving to the wall map. First, the tunnel system beneath the Copper Crown. If Briar's right, it gives us direct access to their facility. Second, Rowe added, tracking the plan, they think I'm compromised. Just another crooked sheriff. They won't expect resistance from my department. And third, Senna prompted. Iver glanced at Cinder, now on his feet, alert. They think I've been hiding all these years. He looked back at them, a dangerous smile cutting across his face. Something feral, something none of them had seen before. The bartender's mask slipped, and Dustbound showed through. They don't realize I've been waiting. Waiting for what? Briar asked. For Malith Rowe to make exactly this move, Iver said. Because when Hollis disappeared, he didn't just take a key. Iver reached into his pocket and withdrew an antique pocket watch, identical to the one Carrick Holt's companion had carried. But he left one behind, Iver finished. And I've been holding it this whole time. The watch caught the light, and the seconds began to tick. Functional, its hands moving forward without hesitation. When we synchronized our watches before Riverside, Hollis Vane gave me this. Iver Crow said. He told me that if anything went wrong, if we got separated, this would be my way back to him. I've carried it every day for 12 years, waiting for the moment it mattered. A watch is the key? Ren Calder asked, doubt flickering across her face. Not the watch, Iver replied, opening the case. Inside the lid, a tiny microchip was embedded, barely visible. What's in it? Coordinates, security codes, dead drop locations, everything needed to find Hollis Vane and access the evidence he took with him. But that's exactly what they want, Talmadge Rose said. If you have the key, why not destroy it? Why keep it all these years? Because what Hollis carries isn't just proof of criminal rackets, Iver said quietly. It's a web that reaches into intelligence agencies, military contractors, financial institutions. Power that doesn't just threaten people or towns, but democracies. He snapped the watch shut and slipped it back into his pocket, the decision already made. I didn't finish my mission 12 years ago. I got Hollis out, but I never delivered what he carried to the people who could actually use it. I thought disappearing would be enough. I was wrong. So what's the play? Rowe asked, the lawman yielding to the strategist. Iver stepped to the map, tracing a route from the clinic to the Copper Crown, then onward to the mine. Tonight, I show up for Carrick Holt's meeting. I play the part they expect, the cornered fugitive willing to trade to save his own skin. While I keep their focus at the front gate, the four of you go in through the back. Use the tunnel from the saloon. To do what exactly? Dr. Senna Hale asked. We're not a strike team. No, Iver agreed. But Cinder is trained to track and retrieve. Briar Wynn knows the tunnels. Rowe has jurisdiction and firepower. And you, he said to Senna, meeting her gaze, have the medical skill to treat Hollis Vane. You think he's there? Briar asked. I think Maelith Rose spent 12 years hunting her husband, Iver said. Now that she's found the ghost, she'll want both of us in the same place when she springs her trap. She's too careful not to have contingencies, including already having Hollis in custody. Rowe nodded slowly. The woman you saw at the mine, she wasn't just confident. She was celebrating. Exactly, Iver said. She believes she's assembled every piece except one. He tapped the pocket with the watch. Tonight, she thinks I'm bringing her the last piece willingly. And instead, Ren asked. Iver's expression hardened into something that finally explained the legend behind Dustbound. Instead, we do what should have been done 12 years ago. We expose everything. The black site, the corruption network, Maelith Rowe's entire operation. We finish the mission that began at Riverside. As they absorbed the scope of it, Iver felt a sharp lightness in his chest, the weight of 12 years lifting. The bartender was fading, revealing the operative who had never truly vanished. There's something you all need to understand, he said, his voice carrying an authority that stilled the room. After tonight, Redemption Valley won't be the same. Neither will any of us. You're asking us to risk everything, Briar said softly. Our lives, our town, our futures. I am, Iver replied without apology. But think about the alternative. If Maelith Rowe turns this place into her new base, how long before more people disappear like Blaine Kest? How long before businesses aren't just closed, but burned? How long before Redemption Valley becomes a place where people vanish into that mine and never come back? Silence followed, heavy, decisive. "I'm in," Wren said suddenly, her voice firm. "This is my home." "And mine," Senna added, already shifting into problem-solving mode. Rowe checked his weapon, a quiet signal of commitment. Briar Wynn was the last to answer. Her eyes rested on a faded photograph of Eamon Wynn, her missing husband. "Eamon always said there comes a moment when keeping secrets does more damage than telling the truth," she said at last. She nodded once, firm. "Let's finish what he started." As they finalized the plan, Cinder moved to Iver Crow's side, pressing against his leg in a wordless show of loyalty. Iver absently scratched the dog's ears, his thoughts already racing toward the confrontation ahead. For 12 years, Iver Crow had buried the man he once was beneath the quiet life of a bartender. Tonight, Dustbound would walk again, not as the feared enforcer of old, but as something far more dangerous. A man with nothing left to lose, and a mission delayed too long. The sun slipped behind the mountains, throwing Redemption Valley into shadow. Inside Dr. Senna Hale's clinic, 5 unlikely allies prepared for war. Across town, the Copper Crown sat dark and silent, its hidden tunnel waiting. Beneath the Black Ridge mine, secrets sealed for decades stirred, ready to be dragged into the light. Midnight in the desert brought a silence so deep it felt physical. Iver stood alone in the Black Ridge mine's gravel lot, floodlights carving his shadow into jagged shapes. Cinder had been left behind with the others. A hard choice, but a necessary one. The antique pocket watch weighed heavily in Iver's jacket, its steady ticking marking the countdown to truth or ruin. The bartender's careful mask was gone. His stance, his movements, the cold focus in his eyes. All of it marked him as the ghost once feared in circles he had fled 12 years earlier. 30 yards ahead, the mine's entrance gaped like an open wound. Rotting timber, rusted steel, and armed men standing too still to be amateurs. Beyond that opening waited answers Iver had carried for more than a decade. And, if he was right, the end of a mission left unfinished. "Right on time, Mr. Blackwood." Carrick Holt stepped out of the shadows. The tailored suit was gone, replaced by tactical gear that somehow still looked expensive. "Punctuality was always one of your virtues," Holt said. "Spare me the memories," Iver replied, his voice edged with something sharp enough to cut. "Your employer wanted to talk? Let's talk." Holt smiled without warmth. "She's waiting inside. Fair warning, we scanned you on approach. The weapon at your back and the knife in your boot were noted. Both will be taken before the meeting." "I'd be disappointed if you hadn't noticed," Iver said. In truth, he'd counted on it. The discovery and confiscation were part of the illusion he needed to sell. Holt motioned forward. Guards shifted, forming a narrow corridor into the darkness. "After you, Ghost," Holt said softly. "Time for your resurrection." Half a mile away, in the cramped back room of the Copper Crown, Briar Wynn shoved aside a massive antique cabinet that had stood against the rear wall for generations. In the beam of Talmadge Rowe's flashlight, a rough wooden door appeared, secured with 3 heavy padlocks. "Eamon installed this," Briar said, producing a ring of keys. "He told me if anything ever happened to him, this tunnel was a last resort." Dr. Senna Hale knelt beside Cinder, checking the improvised tactical vest strapped to the dog. The pouches held medical supplies, comms gear, and a few strips of beef jerky, payment for loyalty earned the hard way. "How do we even know this tunnel still reaches the mine?" Ren Calder asked, tightening a utility belt that looked oversized on her slight frame. It could have collapsed years ago. Eamon maintained it. Briar replied as the final padlock dropped. He said it was the town's lifeline if things ever went bad. He left maps. She unfolded them and stepped into the dark. A hand-drawn schematic lay spread across a nearby table. The tunnel system was far more elaborate than any of them had expected. A branching lattice that reached not only the mine, but several other points across Redemption Valley. "These aren't just mining tunnels," Talmadge Rose said, studying the map with a practiced eye. "Some of these supports are modern, reinforced, security-rated. This was built for covert movement." "They started during Prohibition," Briar Wynn replied. "Liquor smuggling at first. Later, during the Cold War, government contractors expanded the deeper sections of the mine and repurposed the network for their own needs." "Which means they could still be monitored," Dr. Senna Hale warned. "Motion sensors, trip fields." "Already accounted for," Rose said, producing 4 compact devices from his pocket. "Signal jammers. Military surplus. They'll generate enough electronic noise to mask us, at least until we're deep enough that the rock does it for us." As preparations continued, Ren Calder lingered slightly apart, checking the pepper spray she'd insisted on bringing, along with the hunting knife she'd borrowed from Roe. Of all of them, she had the least experience with danger. But her resolve hadn't wavered. "You don't have to come," Senna said gently. "Someone should stay back. Be ready to contact outside authorities if this goes wrong." Ren lifted her chin. "With all due respect, Doctor, that's bullshit. Iver Crow stood up for me more times than I can count. Against handsy customers, against town gossips, against my own stepfather when the drink made him mean. I'm not sitting this out." Briar squeezed her shoulder, strength in her grip. "Eamon would have liked you. He always said courage matters more than experience." The hidden door swung inward with the groan of ancient hinges, revealing a narrow passage plunging into darkness. Rose's tactical flashlight cut across rough-hewn stone walls reinforced with timber bracing older than anyone present. "According to the map, it's just over a mile to the junction that connects to the mine's lower levels," Briar said, scanning Eamon's notes one last time. "From there, we locate the secure facility." "And Hollis Vane," Senna added, tightening her grip on the medical kit. "If he's being held there, he may need immediate care." Cinder moved to the tunnel entrance, nose testing the stale air, ears sharp. The injured stray from the alley was gone. This was a trained asset now, focused and precise. "Iver gives us 30 minutes before he needs backup," Roe reminded them, glancing at his watch. "That doesn't leave much margin." Briar drew a steady breath, squared her shoulders, and stepped into the tunnel, the posture of a woman reclaiming something stolen. "Then we don't make mistakes," she said. One by one, they followed her underground. Cinder took point, Roe close behind. The darkness swallowed them as the door swung shut with finality. Above, the Copper Crown stood empty, its weathered walls guarding one last secret. Deep beneath Black Ridge, the elevator shuddered as it descended. The ancient machinery groaned in protest, cables whining under the load. Iver Crow stood surrounded by 4 armed guards, their weapons held casually, eyes never leaving his hands. Carrick Holt leaned against the control panel, feigning ease while staying coiled and ready. 14 levels down, Holt remarked as the flickering numbers slid past. Deeper than the original mining operation ever went. Amazing what gets built when government contracts and unlimited money start flowing. Iver said nothing. He conserved energy, memorized every turn, every sound. Level 7 passed, then 8. The air grew colder with each descent. At level 10, the rough stone walls visible through the cage abruptly shifted to smooth concrete. The change was unmistakable. Mining gave way to something else entirely. "We call this the vault," Holt said as the elevator shuddered to a stop at level 14. "Seems appropriate, considering what's stored here and who's waiting." The doors slid apart, unveiling a facility that should never have existed beneath an abandoned mine in a forgotten stretch of desert. Polished concrete reflected recessed lights, and a long corridor of reinforced security doors vanished into the distance. Personnel in tactical gear moved with quiet precision, no insignia, no markings, yet their posture and discipline were unmistakably military. "Welcome to America's shadow," Carrick Holt said, motioning Iver Crow forward. One of many black sites operating beyond congressional oversight, judicial review, or public awareness. Ideal for work that demands discretion. Iver absorbed everything in a glance. Camera placements, airflow vents, emergency routes, his mind slipping into the old, automatic calculus of infiltration and escape. The place was formidable, but nothing was invulnerable. Every fortress hid its flaws, and the deeper he went, the more of them he'd find. They cleared 3 security checkpoints. Each time, Holt supplied biometric authorization. At the third, guards searched Iver efficiently and without ceremony, relieving him of his weapons as promised. The guard who took his Colt 1911 studied it with professional respect before locking it away. "Down here, Ghost. A gun is the least useful thing you could carry," Holt said as they moved on. "Information is the real currency. Secrets, especially the ones you've protected all these years." They rounded a corner into a command center humming with activity. Monitors glowed, servers pulsed, communications arrays whispered. Technicians worked their stations while armed security held the perimeter. At the center stood a glass-walled conference room. Inside it waited the silver-haired woman Iver had spotted from the ridge. Maylith Rowe looked much the same as she had 12 years ago. Few new lines marked her face. Her posture remained rigidly military, her eyes still sharp with the intelligence that had once made her dangerous. She wore a tailored charcoal suit, authority without ornament. As Iver approached, she dismissed her aides with a flick of her hand. By the time Holt escorted him inside, she stood alone. "Daniel Blackwood," she said smoothly. "Or is it Iver Crow now? So many names for one man. I wonder which one you answer to when no one's listening." Iver met her stare without blinking. "Maylith, you look remarkably well for someone who was meant to be collateral damage 12 years ago." If the jab surprised her, she hid it. Survival favors those who recognize betrayal early. "Orzo believed you robbed him and vanished. I always knew the story ran deeper." She indicated a chair across the table. "Please, after 12 years of hunting, we've earned a civil conversation." Iver remained standing. "Where is he?" Her eyebrow lifted. "Direct. Orzo admired that about you. No wasted motion." She tapped a control on the table. A wall panel slid aside, revealing a large monitor. Another tap brought the screen to life. A holding cell appeared. A man sat on a narrow cot, his back to the camera. "Hollis Vane has been our guest for 72 hours, Maylith said calmly. "Removed from the life you built for him in that quaint Oregon coastal town. Fishing boat captain, wasn't it? Poetic, for a man who spent decades among sharks." Iver kept his face still, though the timing clicked into place. 3 days. Cinder's arrival. The sudden tightening around Redemption Valley. "He's been uncooperative," Maylith continued, watching for any crack. Claims the key is gone, destroyed years ago. But we both know that isn't true, don't we, Ghost? What makes you think I have it? Iver asked, stalling while he measured how far Briar Wynn and the others might be through the tunnels. Her laugh was soft and cold. Because I know you, Daniel. I know how you work. Hollis trusted you. You kept it as a fallback, she continued evenly. An insurance policy. You wouldn't have destroyed it. Not when it was the only leverage keeping you both alive all these years. She leaned closer, the polish slipping to reveal steel. The digital vaults Hollis Vane built contain far more than proof of Orzo Blackmere's crimes. They hold the real map, names, dates, accounts, compromat, binding politicians, intelligence services, contractors, and banks across continents. And you want it, Iver Crow said, the shape of it sharpening in his mind. To expose everything? Her smile was razor thin. To control it. Information is the currency of this century, Daniel. More valuable than gold, more decisive than armies. Hollis understood that. He didn't build the system out of justice, but survival. She corrected herself softly. I don't intend to cash it in. I intend to leverage it. Exposure helps no one. Control stabilizes everyone, if managed properly. Iver stepped to the glass overlooking the command floor, partly to read the room beyond, partly to hide his face from her too keen gaze. You've assembled quite a machine, he said. Strange place to run it. Temporary, Malith Rowe replied, joining him. A staging ground, remote, light oversight, infrastructure already paid for by Cold War paranoia. Perfect for consolidation before expansion. She watched the screens glow below. The world is tilting. Those who position themselves now will decide what comes next. And Hollis? Iver asked. Where does he fit? He built it. He understands it, she said. With the key you carry and his expertise, we open everything. Her eyes hardened. If he resists, everyone breaks eventually, even legends. A technician appeared at the door with a tablet. Malith excused herself, stepping out. Through the glass, Iver saw irritation flicker, then concern. When she returned, the cordial mask had sharpened. An interesting complication, she said. Sensors picked up movement in the old tunnels. 4 individuals advancing with intent. Iver kept his expression neutral, recalibrating the clock in his head. Curiosity seekers, he offered lightly. The mind draws them. Unlikely, Malith replied, unconvinced. Signal jammers suggest otherwise. She studied him. In 6 years at the Copper Crown, did you collect allies as well as tips? Before he could answer, alarms rolled through the facility. Red lights strobed. The command floor snapped into disciplined motion. Carrick Holt burst in, urgency replacing his earlier ease. Breach at Junction B. Feeds show armed intruders and a dog. Specialized, tactical. Malith's eyes never left Iver. So much for thrill seekers. She turned to Holt. Protocol? Relocate you to a hardened sector, Holt said, immediately. I know the protocol, she cut in. Lock down the site, capture the intruders if possible, neutralize if necessary. Then, to Iver. Our reunion will have to be brief. A shame. I'd hoped to avoid more blood. Had you? Iver asked quietly. A faint tightening at her eyes was the only answer. She nodded to Holt. Take Mr. Crow to see his old friend. Perhaps familiarity will loosen his resolve. Moment? Hollis Vane finished quietly. Iver Crow met his eyes. I know it is. Carrick Holt exhaled through his nose, unimpressed. Enough riddles. Miss Rowe wants the key. not philosophy. Hollis shifted on the cot, the metal frame creaking beneath him. You still don't understand what you're asking for, he said, still addressing Iver, not Holt. That system wasn't built to be owned. It was built to survive. And it has, Iver replied, barely. Holt stepped closer, impatience sharpening his voice. Last chance. Where is the key? Iver turned just enough for Holt to see his face clearly. You already searched me. You know I'm not carrying it openly. Holt's jaw tightened. Then it's hidden. Somewhere predictable. No, Hollis said calmly. Somewhere personal. Silence settled, thick and dangerous. Holt looked between them. You think sentiment protects you? Ms. Rowe ordered me to extract answers. Cooperation is optional. He reached for the intercom panel on the wall. Before he could press it, Iver spoke. If you kill him, you lose everything. Holt paused, fingers hovering. Explain. The architecture isn't centralized, Iver continued evenly. Hollis never trusted single-point access. The key only opens the first layer. The rest requires live authentication, behavioral markers, cognitive patterns. Kill him and the vault seals itself permanently. Hollis watched Holt closely. He's telling the truth. Holt studied them for a long moment, then slowly lowered his hand. Ms. Rowe didn't mention that. She wouldn't, Iver said. She believes control comes from possession. This system was designed to punish that assumption. Holt's eyes flicked to the camera in the corner. You're both very confident for men in a locked room. Iver leaned back slightly, posture loose, almost casual. Confidence comes from timing. As if on cue, the facility lights flickered, just once. Holt froze. What was that? Hollis's mouth curved into the faintest smile. Signal interference. A second flicker followed. This time, distant shouting echoed faintly through the corridor beyond the door. Holt tapped his earpiece. Control, report. Static answered. Iver's gaze sharpened, the bartender fully gone now. Dustbound had surfaced. They're closer than you think, he said. Holt's hand went to his sidearm. If this is a bluff. It isn't, Iver interrupted. You have intruders in your tunnel network. One of them knows this facility better than you do. Another doesn't miss. And the dog. He allowed himself a thin smile. The dog was trained for extraction. Holt stared at him, recalculating. Hollis leaned closer to Iver, voice low. You always did have a flair for entrances. This one's overdue, Iver replied. The alarm surged again, louder this time. Red strobes washed the corridor outside the cell. Holt cursed under his breath and turned toward the door. Stay here, both of you. He keyed the lock and stepped out, sealing the door behind him. The moment Holt was gone, Hollis let out a slow breath. So, he said quietly, you finally decided to finish it. Iver nodded once. Tonight. Hollis looked at the reinforced walls, the cameras, the ceiling vents. Then we're going to need more than good timing. Iver's eyes lifted to the vent above them, then back to Hollis. Good thing we planned for that 12 years ago. Far above them, beneath Redemption Valley, the facility shook again, harder this time. And for the first time since Riverside, the ghost smiled. For a heartbeat, there was real curiosity. Hollis Vane's question hanging in the air. Carrick Holt pushed off the wall, patience thinning. Enough, Holt snapped. The watch, Mr. Crow. Ms. Rowe knows you have it. Of course she does, Iver Crow said evenly. Just like she knows what's actually inside the vaults Hollis built. And what's that? Holt asked, though his face suggested he already knew. Names, Hollis said quietly. Dates, transaction trails. Proof tying respectable corporations to black operations that would shock even the most jaded observer. The kind of information that makes people disappear, Iver added. Holt's smile was empty. Like Eamon Wynne, he asked the wrong questions about what was happening under his town. The confirmation hit Iver like a body blow. He showed nothing. How many others? More than you'd guess, Holt replied. Fewer than you'd fear. Most people respond to subtler pressures, money troubles, family emergencies, sudden health scares. It's remarkable how fast curiosity dies when life collapses. A distant boom rolled through the floor. The lights flickered, steadied. Holt's hand flew to his earpiece. Report, he barked, then listened, jaw tightening. Your friends are proving resourceful. They've breached the lower access tunnels. Iver and Hollis exchanged a glance. Shared recognition. The clock was moving. Which brings us, Holt said, drawing his sidearm, to persuasion. He aimed at Hollis's knee, pain without killing the asset. The watch, now. Iver raised his hands, calm masking coiled tension. Left jacket pocket. Slow, Holt warned. Any sudden move and Mr. Vane learns why I was Orzo's preferred interrogator before you. Iver reached in and withdrew the antique pocket watch. The gold case caught the harsh light, familiar weight settling into his palm. Open it, Holt ordered. One thing first, Iver said. Holt's finger tightened. This isn't a negotiation. It's a warning, Iver replied. The watch is paired to Hollis's biometrics. Opened by the wrong person or under duress, the data wipes itself. Holt weighed the odds. Miss Rowe has people who can break safeguards. She knows better, Hollis cut in. I built systems federal cryptographers couldn't crack. You think I'd insure myself with anything less? Another explosion, closer, then gunfire. Alarms screamed. Red lights pulsed. Holt keyed his earpiece again, listened, swore. Your friends found help. Some of our people are switching sides. Iver allowed the faintest smile. Not everyone here believes in what this place sells. Naivete? Holt scoffed. Like disappearing those who ask inconvenient questions? Hollis said. Like Eamon Wynne? Holt's eyes flicked, just a fraction. For men like Iver, a fraction was enough. Iver moved, clean, violent precision. A strike to Holt's gun hand, a sweep to his base. Holt countered fast, deflecting, trying to buy space. Hollis lunged, gripping Holt's wrist. The three of them crashed together, training against training, desperation against discipline. The gun fired, deafening in the cell. Concrete spalled overhead. Iver drove a measured blow to Holt's throat, not crushing, just enough to steal breath and balance. As Holt staggered, Iver twisted the weapon free, reversing it in one fluid motion. Down, Iver commanded, the old authority back. Holt assessed, chose survival, and dropped to his knees, hands rising. You won't get out. Every exit's sealed. Ms. Rowe plans for plans. Iver cuffed Holt with his own belt and then fashioned a gag from the man's tailored shirt. That's the difference, Iver said quietly. You're thinking exits. I'm thinking entrances. He turned to Hollis, who stared at the watch with reverence and dread. You kept it, Hollis said softly. All these years. I made a promise, Iver replied. Hollis's smile carried a weary understanding. And the bartender keeps his promises. Iver met his eyes. Every damn one. Sacrificed to keep that promise. Iver Crow stripped Carrick Holt's credentials and earpiece, then checked the corridor through the cell's narrow observation window. One guard, he murmured, armed, shaky. And behind him? Hollis Vane asked. Iver's smile was thin and exact. The ghost's smile, not the bartender's. Chaos, he said. Exactly what we need. Elsewhere in the facility, Cinder tore through a ventilation grate with explosive force, dropping onto a stunned technician and pinning him with clean, practiced pressure. The dog incapacitated without killing, opening a lane for the humans pouring in behind him. Talmadge Rowe came next, landing in a low crouch, weapon up. Dr. Senna Hale followed, medical kit already open as she assessed the unconscious tech. Briar Wynn and Wren Calder brought up the rear, Briar moving with surprising agility, Wren compensating for inexperience with fierce resolve. Control room secured, Rose said, scanning the monitors. Diversion worked. Most security is responding to blasts in the east quadrant. The diversion had been Briar's contribution. Eamon Wynn's old caches, planted years ago as insurance. Small charges, carefully placed for confusion without collapse. There, Wren said, pointing. Detention level. The feed showed Iver and another man, Hollis, subduing a guard. Iver moved with lethal economy, nothing like the measured calm of the bartender they knew. He's heading for the central elevator, Rowe observed. That's the rendezvous, Briar said. But look, response teams converging. Too many. Senna pulled up the schematic. Emergency stairwell between them and the elevator. If he reaches it before they cut him off, he'll need help. Wren finished. Rowe was already moving. Briar, Senna, stay. Run interference. Lock doors, reroute patrols. And Malith Rowe? Briar asked, hands flying over the console. Find her, Rowe said. Guide us in. This ends tonight. He turned to Wren. You stay. With respect, Sheriff, Wren said, tightening her borrowed belt. No. Cinder will respond better to a familiar voice. Rowe started to object, then saw it in her eyes. He nodded once. Stay behind me. No heroics. We get Iver and Hollis, then we extract. Wren nodded sharply. Cinder slid to her side, alert. As they moved, Senna touched Rowe's arm. My kit includes more than bandages. I figured, Rowe said. Let's hope we don't need it. Briar straightened suddenly. I've got Malith, server room. Her voice tightened. And she's not alone. On the central monitor, Malith Rowe stood amid towering server racks. Beside her, alive, battered, unmistakable, was Eamon Wynn. Briar's hand trembled. He's alive. Leverage, Senna said grimly. Briar's expression hardened, mirroring the change they'd seen in Iver earlier. Then let's answer some questions. Rowe nodded and led Wren and Cinder out. At the door, he turned back. Guide us. Bring this place into the light. No more shadows. When the door sealed, Briar and Senna became something else. Operators. Burn it down, Briar said, fingers dancing across the controls. For the first time that night, Senna smiled with real pleasure. The pocket watch ticked steadily in Iver's palm as he and Hollis threaded the detention corridors. Credentials from the unconscious guard had freed them from the block, but alarms still screamed, gunfire echoing in pockets. You've got people inside, Hollis said as they paused at an intersection. Not by design, Iver replied, but Eamon wasn't the only one who hated what Malith built. Hollis glanced sharply. Eamon's alive. Yes, Iver said. Another leash she kept instead of cutting. That was always her way. Hollis said, bitterness surfacing. Dead men are quiet. Controlled men say exactly what you want. They reached a security door. Clearance too high. Iver studied the lock, weighing options. In the old days, Hollis said, you'd have had that open in 30 seconds. In the old days, Iver replied, already working. I carried different tools. Specialized tools, Iver Crow replied. But there's more than one way through a door. He found a low ventilation panel and popped it free. Maintenance access, he said, already moving. Runs parallel to most primary corridors. Standard design in facilities like this. Service routes that don't interrupt operations. Or provide a convenient alternative, Hollis Vane added, slipping in behind him. They crawled through dust and steel. After a moment, Hollis spoke quietly. Why now, Iver? After 12 years of staying invisible, why risk everything? Iver paused, weighing the question. Because some debts don't age out. The mission, Hollis said. The real one, not Orzo's version. The evidence wasn't just about criminals, Iver answered. It exposed a system that let them operate without consequence. Power without accountability. And you think exposing it now matters? I think truth matters, Iver said simply. Even when it's inconvenient, even when it's dangerous. They reached another access panel near the central elevator shaft. Iver listened, then eased it open. You've changed, Hollis said. The ghost I knew followed orders. He didn't talk about accountability. The ghost died at Riverside, Iver said. The bartender came after. And who are you now? Iver checked the corridor, clear. The man who finishes what we started, he said. With or without the watch. They stepped out just as the elevator doors at the far end opened. Iver tensed, then relaxed. Cinder bounded out first, followed by Talmadge Rowe and, unexpectedly, Wren Calder. Cavalry's here, Iver said, grim satisfaction in his voice. Right on time. Dawn broke over Redemption Valley, indifferent to the lives altered beneath it. The Black Ridge mine stood silent, yellow tape fluttering, the only sign something momentous had occurred. In the back room of Dr. Senna Hale's clinic, Iver sat alone, turning the antique pocket watch in his hands. A crack spidered across its face, survived but scarred. Outside, federal vehicles rolled in. Agents interviewed, catalogued, seized. Secrecy gave way to daylight. Rowe entered, uniform rumpled, exhaustion etched deep. He set a cup of coffee before Iver. It's over. Marshals pulled the last drives from level 14. The site's shut down. Iver nodded, silent. Malith Rowe is in custody, Rowe continued, along with Carrick Holt and 32 others. Olin Greer and Vetch Moreland are in Phoenix. Cyrus Dent tried to claim deep cover, didn't hold once Hollis's evidence hit. Iver looked up. Hollis? Stable. He'll recover. Protective custody at the regional hospital. Testimony recorded before witness protection. Iver's expression softened. The others? Briar Wynn is with prosecutors. Turns out Eamon Wynn documented far more than anyone knew. Wren gave her statement and went back to the Copper Crown, opened for the evening like nothing happened. Rowe shook his head. Steel spine. And Cinder? A rare smile. Napping under Senna's desk after the biggest breakfast she could make. FBI K-9 tried to recruit him. Senna declined, colorfully. Iver allowed a brief smile, then it faded. The vaults, Rowe said. Unprecedented. Names, dates, accounts, recordings, Officials, contractors, bankers. Arrests are just the start. They want to talk to you. Rowe added. Immunity, new identity, clean slate. Iver laughed without humor. Another name, another town, another bar. Is that so bad? Rowe asked. You mattered here. Iver set the watch on the table, cracked face catching the light. Was I living or just hiding? Rowe considered. Ask Wren, ask Briar, ask Cinder. The man in that tunnel last night wasn't hiding. Before Iver could answer, the door opened. Dr. Senna Hale stepped in, exhausted but satisfied. The look of a doctor whose patient had survived the worst. He'll be okay, she said quietly. Iver nodded. Outside, Redemption Valley woke to a new day. No longer under shadows, and finally, honestly, awake. A soft shuffle came from the hallway. Cinder patted in on quiet paws, bandage visible, then paused. The cattle dog moved straight to Iver Crow, leaning against his leg, not for comfort, but reassurance. Iver reached down without thinking, scratching behind the dog's ears. The gesture felt natural now. Your friend's awake, Dr. Senna Hale said, pouring herself coffee. He's asking for you. Says there are things only you will understand about what comes next. Iver nodded, unsurprised. Hollis Vane had always thought 3 moves ahead. The feds are arranging transport, Talmadge Rowe added. You've got about 2 hours before they want you both on a secure flight to Washington. 2 hours, Iver repeated, looking around the clinic that had served as their makeshift command post. That's enough. For what? Senna asked. One last drink at the Copper Crown, Iver said, and a proper goodbye to Briar Wynn and Wren Calder. The Copper Crown looked different in morning light. Smaller somehow, but steadier. Like an old fighter past his prime, still standing. Dust motes floated in sunbeams, cutting through the windows, catching on the scuffed floor and the bar's honest imperfections. Wren was arranging glasses when Iver stepped inside, Cinder at his heels. She looked up, exhaustion in her eyes, and something new behind it. Figured you'd be halfway to a government bunker by now, she said. Not without saying goodbye, Iver replied, taking a seat at the bar. Not his usual place. Strange, after 6 years. Briar around? Right here. Briar emerged from the back office with a ledger, gray hair pulled tight, eyes warm despite her businesslike calm. Just closing the real books, she said. Feels good. She studied Iver. So, the ghost is finally leaving Redemption Valley. Thomas Cole is leaving, he said gently. Dustbound died last night, somewhere in those tunnels. Briar nodded, understanding without explanation. She reached beneath the counter and produced a bottle. Not the house whiskey, but a rare single malt. Eamon always said we'd open this when something truly meaningful happened, she said, setting out 3 glasses. I think this qualifies. She poured. Wren stepped closer, the 2 women bound now by shared danger and resolve. What happens to the Copper Crown? Iver asked. It stays open, Briar said firmly. This town needs its gathering place. And you need a new bartender? Iver noted. Wren straightened. Already handled. Briar's giving me a shot. Iver raised an eyebrow. From waitress to bartender, that's a jump. She earned it, Briar said simply. They raised their glasses in quiet acknowledgement of survival, of truth, of who they'd become. As Iver sipped the whiskey, he memorized the room. For 6 years, this place had been refuge, cover, and home. Whatever name came next, part of him would stay here, with those who had seen through the mask and stood with him anyway. The agent said something interesting, Wren said, breaking the silence. They think none of this would have come out if Melith Rowe hadn't gotten greedy, if she'd let sleeping ghosts lie. She couldn't, Iver said. People like her never have enough control. And now? Briar asked. Now the cards are on the table, Iver said. Names, connections, operations, some will slip away. But the network she built is finished. Thanks to you, Wren said. Iver shook his head. Thanks to Eamon, who kept records. Thanks to Blaine Kest, who trained Cinder to find me. Thanks to all of you, who chose to fight instead of looking away. The door opened. Rowe stepped in, regret in his eyes. Time to go, Iver. The feds are getting antsy. Iver drained his glass and stood. Cinder moved with him, clearly not planning to be left behind. About the dog, Iver began. Already handled, Senna said, entering behind Rowe. He's officially a therapy animal, essential to a federal witness. She smiled. Turns out I still have some pull. A warm pressure filled Iver's chest. Not tension, gratitude. I don't know how to thank you, he said. Don't, Briar replied. Just live. Really live, not hiding, not waiting. Even with everything that came before? Iver asked. Especially because of it, Briar said. Redemption isn't erasing the past. It's what you do with what's left. Rowe checked his watch. We have to move. Iver nodded. He reached into his pocket and placed the antique watch on the bar, its cracked face catching the light. For the Copper Crown, he said, a reminder that even broken things can still matter. Purpose settled the moment Briar Wynn lifted the watch. She studied the cracked glass, then slid it gently into the cash drawer beneath the bar. I'll keep it safe, she said, just in case you ever find your way back. Iver Crow won't be coming back, he said, acknowledging the hard truth of witness protection. Maybe not, Wren Calder replied, surprising him with her calm certainty. But whoever you become next, there'll always be a place for him here. Handshakes followed. The hugs were shorter than anyone expected. Iver headed for the door, Cinder matching his stride without being asked. One more thing, Briar called. Iver turned, taking in the bar that had been his shelter and the people who'd become something like family. Whoever you become, Briar said, make sure he remembers how to pour a proper whiskey. It'd be a shame to waste all that training. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Iver laughed, an unguarded sound, free of weight. I'll do my best. Morning light laid Redemption Valley bare and honest as Iver and Cinder walked toward the waiting federal vehicles. Behind them, the Copper Crown stood weathered and imperfect, still standing. Ahead waited uncertainty, a blank name, another life to build. But this time was different. He wasn't running from the past. He was moving toward something new, and he wasn't alone. At the black SUV, a federal agent held the door, eyeing Cinder with a practiced look. The dog comes too? The agent asked. Iver rested a hand on Cinder's head, feeling the solid reassurance there. We're a package, he said. He spots trouble better than your whole detail. The agent hesitated, then nodded. Fair enough. Long drive ahead. As Iver settled into the seat and Cinder jumped up beside him, he caught one last glimpse of Redemption Valley through tinted glass. The town looked quiet, ordinary, its extraordinary secrets buried again beneath normal life. But Iver knew better now. He knew that beneath the plainest places lived remarkable truths. That behind the mask of an unremarkable bartender could stand a man capable of choosing courage. That redemption wasn't a finish line. It was a road, one that sometimes demanded you face the very ghosts you'd spent a lifetime outrunning. The SUV pulled away, carrying Iver toward whatever waited beyond the valley. Behind him, the Copper Crown stood watch, keeper of old and new secrets, its walls holding stories already turning into legend. And somewhere in Washington, the digital vaults Hollis Vane had built 12 years earlier were opening at last, spilling light into corners long left dark. Dustbound was gone, but Iver, whatever name he would wear next, was finally, after 12 long years, beginning to live. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for giving your time to this story. Some journeys shape us, and we hope this one left a mark on your heart. There are more paths ahead, more legends of love, hardship, and redemption beneath the western sky. Please subscribe, leave your thoughts, and travel with us once again. Thank you, and God bless. Aviso legal. Disclaimer. The stories presented here are creative expressions and may mix historical inspiration with dramatized scenes. AI tools contribute to some elements of voice, imagery, and structure. But every published story is refined by editors and creators to ensure authentic emotional impact. We honor YouTube's policies and do not generate deceptive likenesses or artificial depictions of real people. All audiovisual components are legally licensed. Any use, redistribution, or alteration of this content must be granted through written consent. Your presence here means a lot. Thank you for supporting artistic storytelling.